Oh, monsterhunterwilds, how I love thee. But with all that love I have for this game, I gotta say, there is no Monster Hunter title that leaves me more conflicted than this one. Back when I first got into the Monster Hunter series, I always would imagine or fantasize about a complete open world game where you could just run out and fight a monster that's living in its environment. This was one of the key things that had me so excited for Wilds over any other title to come out since I first got into the franchise. But after putting about 60 hours in the game, I find that there's 3 core problems that just leave me feeling a bit disappointed with the overall title. Let's start with my first reason, which is the topic we were just speaking about, the open world. Now, having an open world isn't exactly new to Monster Hunter since monsterhunterworld introduced the concept, but Wilds is the one to take it a step further and make it that instead of open world sections, the entire game is completely free to be roamed at your discretion. The only problem is the game actually doesn't encourage you to explore freely. This is because each map is more connected in a straight line. You can't go from the Oil Well Basin all the way to Windward Plains. You have to go to Windward Plains, and then you gotta go to Scarlet Rainforest, then you could get to the Oil Well Basin, and then you could get to Ice Shard Cliffs. This really hurts the open world feel this game was going for, especially because that you could just teleport to wherever you need to be, meaning that a lot of the time, the open world doesn't really feel anything different from just being Monster Hunter World. You're not really going to be traveling from one area to another. You're probably going to, let's say, be in Windward Plains, and oh, you gotta hunt down an Ajarakan, let me just teleport to Oil Well. When I originally heard that they're doing a complete open world concept, I'd imagine that they'd really utilize this by potentially having you fight monsters in one area, and then while you're hunting them, they travel to another. For example, let's say you're fighting Dogshima in the Scarlet Rainforest, but it decides to retreat and meet up with its pack in the Windward Plains. This could have led to far more dynamic hunts, but that's sadly just not the case. In addition to that, you don't really need to go out and mine, harvest, or really anything for that matter, which also encourages you to not really explore and go find what you need, because you either 1, already have it, or 2, there's an easier way of getting it. Listen, while I may be an old gen hunter, I am all for quality of life changes, and I don't think that the old gen was flawless in how it made you get materials or items, but I do believe it forced you to interact with the environment because you'd have to go out mining every so often. As more and more games come out, that becomes less and less apparent and just kind of makes you feel not like a hunter or someone who needs to gather materials to prepare for hunts. You just already are given what you need and you're sent off. And the last thing I'll add to this point is while the maps are honestly the best they've ever been in the entire series, you're not really going to be exploring them like you would other games because you're going to be going around with the Sacred's auto function. The Sacred automatically takes you where you need to be, and I understand why they did this, I really do. These maps, and especially all these secret paths, can be very, very confusing. So making it like this allows hunters to not get lost easily, and that's appreciated because in the ancient forest and world, I still to this day do not know where the fuck I'm going. But in my personal opinion, I think it might have been better to just let people get lost and have to actually learn the map, you know, like a hunter. This could have been a good way to distinguish the more experienced hunters from the newer hunters and have something else that hunters have to learn outside of just combat, because that's what makes Monster Hunter, Monster Hunter. You are not just a warrior or some mercenary going out to kill these monsters. You're actually supposed to interact with the environment as a hunter should, but the Sacred kind of takes away from that considering you don't actually really learn the map's paths. The Sacred just does it for you. Now, for my second point, I know this one is going to be a little bit more controversial due to the recent talks in the community, but this game is just way too easy. Monster Hunter's earlier titles were decently well known for having a good amount of difficulty, and in my opinion, it was actually quite needed. It helped with immersing you into the game. It felt like you were really fighting monsters. But now, unless there's some guy hiding in a bush with a rifle aimed at my head, there is no monster hunting, because the only monster here is me. Monster Hunter kill times have never been lower on average. Most hunts will last at best 5 minutes, and if you're fighting what is supposed to be the hard fights in the game, you're maybe getting 10 to 13 if you're messing around a bit. This is bad for a few reasons. One being that you're not actually going to experience these monsters fully when you hunt them. you're going to be beating them so bad that you're not going to actually get to see their full moveset, which will hurt your overall experience with them, because instead of seeing this new unique monster with its own set of moves, you're really just fighting another punching bag with a different coat of paint. But you know what? That's actually fine to an extent. For the earlier and even higher rank hunts, it is okay for the game to be a bit easier, especially since this game has drawn in the most amount of new people it ever has, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm not saying every hunt in this game needs to be a Dark Souls no armor run. I'm saying that we need to raise the overall difficulty ceiling. You could keep the difficulty floor where it is to help people be immersed and actually get into the game at first. But for us veteran hunters or people who want to really push themselves to the limit, this is where you should add more difficulty. Now, there's a lot of arguments against this, but I'm going to be replying to all of those now and just generally talking why I can't really agree with them. The first and most prominent isn't that the games aren't getting easier, you're just getting better as a veteran hunter, which, as someone who replays the old games frequently enough, I could not disagree with this more. You can actually physically see that the games are getting easier just by how many new options the hunter is constantly getting at their disposal. Not to mention that the monsters aren't growing in proportion to the hunter, leaving them as the same old as they've always been, while you will continue to get more options as the games continue. Let me give you an example of a small change that was made in World that actually goes a long way into making the hunter far better at their job. That being able to heal and move. Back in the old gen, when you drank a potion or any other healing item, you weren't able to move at all. This was changed in Worlds where you can either walk or run while drinking a potion or using life powder or whatever you're doing at the current moment. This may not seem like a big deal, but if you've ever actually played the old gen games, you will know that you're going to get caught drinking a potion and it's likely going to be the death of you. And a lot of the time, if you are playing World or one of the new gen games, try to think when you're running and healing, hey, would I have died if I couldn't move there at all? Because for me, when I look at it, the answer a lot of the time is yes. And this is just one small change. They've made it even easier over the games, considering in Rise you can hop on your Palamute, and in Wilds you can hop on the Sacred and heal, which automatically moves for you so you don't even have to think about moving, and also just outspeeds the monster. In the old games, even if you need to run to another zone to heal, considering there was loading zones where monsters couldn't follow you, you still had to kinda make it to the zone before they catch you, which could be not as easy as you might think, considering the older hunters are generally much slower and have less options to just kind of throw out. And this is just one minor change, a game that came out a long time ago at this point. That's not considering all the other things they have added, like endemic life being able to help you out during a hunt, different environmental traps you can use against the monsters turf warring against each other to your own advantage. None of these things are bad inclusions, but they do give the hunter more advantages, while the monsters really haven't gained anything since pins. And everything I just stated are general changes. This is not even mentioning the more specific weapon changes that just makes the average weapon much stronger, have more options, and can delete monsters better than ever. Now, let me say this again to reiterate one more time. The story mode content and the average hunts in this game can stay where they are. I think they're at a good point to getting people into the game and is just generally healthy for newcomers to play at that level. What I am saying is the endgame optional content should be harder for the veteran hunters or even for the newer hunters that want something to really push them to the limits or really test how good they actually are. Now, another common reply you'll hear when people complain about difficulty in the new gen games is that just wait for the new expansion. Low rank and high rank have always been easy, and master rank / G rank is where all the difficulty's always been. I can actually understand this point to a certain degree, especially if this is coming from one who played mostly World and Rise, where, in that case, it is mostly the truth. The low rank and high rank of those games are incredibly easy, while the G rank / master rank expansion is where they put all, if not most, of the difficulty. My one main problem with this point is that if you look at the games before World and Rise, this isn't really true at all. Base 4 and base generations have hard hunts. In fact, they have hunts in those games that I don't think I can really beat on my own. I also believe it's really not good to normalize difficult hunts being locked behind the DLC, because you're paying $70 for the base game now, and then another $40 for the DLC just so you can get a hard hunt. I don't think that's really healthy, and I don't think Capcom should ever really think that way, and neither should the players. I have no personal issues with the expansions, and I pretty much like all of them conceptually, especially that we get free updates before and after the expansion. Just these things should not be locked behind DLC, especially when we're cashing out $100 on one game. Now, my last and final issue that off-puts me from Wilds actually also ties into the difficulty, and that is that the endgame is kind of bad in my opinion. One of Monster Hunter's biggest strengths is its roster of monsters, having a bunch of unique and special creatures that everyone has their own favorites and can hunt whoever they want, when they want. And this goes even further when you consider that Wilds, in my opinion, has the best base roster of any Monster Hunter to date. Now, you take this generationally, historical, amazing roster and limit it down to only 6 monsters. That isn't good. Now, I will say, the 6 monsters that are chosen to be the endgame monsters are all actually really good hunts, and I think they were great picks if you only had to pick 6. But they didn't have to only pick 6. They could have done far more with the endgame in my personal opinion. This kind of hurts even more when you consider that we were promised a pretty good endgame, considering they brought back 2 endgame mechanics in tempered monsters and frenzied monsters, and also brought in a new type of monster, guardian monsters. And out of these 3, the only ones you're gonna really be hunting are the tempered monsters. And while tempered monsters can be guardian monsters, none of the guardian monsters are monsters you hunt in the endgame. I honestly don't know why they even brought back Frenzy, considering not only is it completely useless to hunt these monsters, the mechanics on the Frenzy monsters aren't how they were in 4U, and it's not like they tried to change them or anything, they just didn't add the mechanics, and in fact, you could argue that the Frenzied monsters are easier than their normal variants, which should never be the case. Frenzied monsters in 4U were more aggressive, faster, and would come back after death and continue their rampage. In this game, they do literally none of that. The only key difference is that they can give you the Frenzy virus, which is really an advantage because the hunter can get affinity off of it. They even tried to kind of hype up Frenzied monsters by giving you cutscenes of monsters very literally tearing each other apart. Then you go and fight them and they're nothing. They just get destroyed like everything else, if not even easier than everything else. You're probably saying to yourself now, okay, but what about the monster type that actually works? The tempered monsters, how are they? And I actually believe they're pretty good outside of them just still not being strong enough. The problem is you only are going to hunt 6 of them because of how the endgame works. The endgame right now is centered around the idea of Ardian weapons, weapons that are made from lost technology that you get from killing tempered monsters. These lost parts come in different rarities, and the highest rarity is only given out by 6 monsters, the 4 new Apexes, the flagship Arkveld, and Gormagala. Now, even if we ignore the fact that you can only hunt 6 monsters, the Ardian weapons themselves are kind of not a good inclusion in my opinion. Essentially, they kind of allow you to build your own weapon, which sounds really cool till you consider that they pretty much make every other weapon obsolete, so you're kind of forced to see the same design on every single hunter's weapon, which takes away one of the best parts of Monster Hunter, the designs of weapons and armor. And the Ardian armor isn't really good at all, but the Ardian weapons are completely game-changing, and since there aren't layered weapons, you can't even make your weapon actually look cool anymore. Everyone's gonna be rocking the same metallic design, which kind of screams a similar problem of World, which, while I don't think it's nearly as bad as World, I really just miss the old gen having so many different weapon types and seeing hunters rock out with different gear and equipment. With all these reasons combined, I just kind of feel off playing Wilds. I feel like I should like it so much more than I should. Or a perfect way to describe it is, I want to love Wilds, but I only like Wilds. This game lacks a form of replayability that the old Monster Hunter games had in spades, and were in fact some of their biggest strong suits. To all those hunters out there that have hundreds of thousands of hours, how many of those hours are in the endgame grinding forever equipment or decorations you want? Probably a good 90% of your hours are spent doing that. This game sadly just doesn't feel as fulfilling as older titles. There's no really difficult monsters for me to grind out with friends or a team to try to beat since it's too powerful for me to take it down on my own. The maps, while beautiful, just you really don't get to fully experience due to the game kind of forcing you to use the Sacred to get around in a timely manner. And there is no real endgame content to keep you playing for hours on end. Like I said earlier in the video, I have about 50 to 60 hours and I feel pretty much done. I've done a good chunk of the side quest, I've tried to experience as much as I can in the game, but I don't think I want to really play it anymore till a new title update comes out. There's just nothing that makes me feel as fulfilled as the old gen games. There was nothing like when me and one other hunter tried 15 attempts on the final thing of Dread King in GU, us using a plane of me using aerial style to knock it down so we can break its wings so we can flash bomb it later. There's just none of that. The gameplay feels good, but you kind of feel like an incredibly powerful and sharpened blade with nothing to cut. There is nothing that will contest you in this game, and there's nothing to really grind, leaving it empty. But once again, this is just how I feel about the game. I think the game has its strengths, but it just doesn't have enough to keep me going. But hey, if you're a new fan, an old fan, whatever you are, and you like this game, don't let me stop you. I hope you continue to enjoy this game as long as possible, because just because it's not my kind of game doesn't mean I should hate on it. And if it's your kind of game, keep playing it, enjoy it, have fun. This video is just kind of vent my frustrations over the past few years of the newest Monster Hunter games, and hopefully at least change the endgame a bit so that veteran hunters that feel like me can kind of actually have something to do again. But that'll be all for this video. If you have some opinions on your own that you want to share to the world, drop in the comments below. I'd love to read and reply to them and just have general Monster Hunter discussion. So yeah, hopefully see you next time, catch you in another video, and see you on the hunt. Bye-bye.